ladies and gentlemen. Tonight my guest is Professor Swint Friday. I'm Mark DiCarlo, and we're trying for about the third time to reboot the show. And I wanted to apologize again to Dr. Friday for the last time he was on. We had a little bit of a mistake. Hey, thanks for coming on. And you're a Texas A&M economics professor, right?
Finance professor.
Finance professor. I'm sorry, and a local entrepreneur as well.
Try to be, yeah. Try to be.
So you have some interest. We were talking before the show, and you had some kind of problems with robberies and the homeless. You have some interesting stories. You have a property not too far from where my office here is on Santa Fe and Elizabeth, right?
Right off Santa Fe and Elizabeth. Yeah, I think Corpus is experiencing the growing pains of all the transition, and we've had a couple of actually 3 robberies there.
Okay, so here in the inner city, where is that?
I'd be right behind the Shoreline Hospital.
Okay.
This is about where we're at. And,
so you've had like 3 robberies.
Right, over a period of time. One we identified as an employee who
well, that one doesn't count.
Stole some material out and then sold it to a metal company here.
That one doesn't count.
And
we gotta screen those guys a little bit better. Gotta screen them a little bit better. So, did you get a conviction? You got a conviction.
Well, the interesting thing is the metal company, he sold the stainless steel that we paid a lot of money for wouldn't give us our metal back either. So I'm not sure what the.
But did you you did convict him?
I'm not sure what came of that. We followed up on it a little, and they were doing something with it, so I'm not entirely sure how they followed.
What about the other robberies you had?
2 others. A clever guy in a gray sweatpants and a gray hoodie, riding a little bicycle, stole all of our cameras off the building, and then.
But it is my understanding they'll do that about anywhere.
Yeah,
if they're exposed, that they need to be caged in. So so that one doesn't count either.
Oh, okay.
So that's 2.
And the other one probably doesn't count either. I pulled up to the building. We're remodeling the building and inside, and I pulled up with some paint and different things that we're doing in there, and had the back of my vehicle open, and not sure if I had the side door open or closed. Or the driver's door open or closed, but we carried the stuff in. We're in there a few minutes and came back out, and I was about to drive off, and I saw a guy on a bicycle in a similar outfit to the guy who stole the cameras, riding away up the street, and then didn't think anything till I got in my car and started looking, and my wallet was gone. And
oh my gosh! And, I would say that one counts because you wouldn't have thought in a couple minutes. But your parking lot over there isn't fenced in either yet.
No, it's not fenced in.
I've noticed a lot of them are fenced in here.
And I was parking right on 5th Street. And
what kind of a business are you starting over there?
Well, we've got a wealth management business there, and then we're looking at leasing a part of the building, maybe to a medical practice. And,
I see.
And so.
And what happened in Flower? You had a story about your property in Flower Bluff too, right?
Yeah, that's we've had a few robberies out there. Nothing major. Probably a half dozen small robberies of tools, equipment, different things.
That's
small equipment, but and gotten a good bit of it back. The local homeless population was carrying off different things they could find, and one guy apparently sat there all night until he figured out the combination on the lock, and
I shouldn't laugh, right? I was like, that never happened to me, you know.
They were
right?
subsidizing their meth addiction, I think. But pretty persistent guy. If he'd have gotten a job, it'd have probably made more money. But he sat there for several hours. It kind of seemed on the camera back there, but couldn't.
That's your rock business. Right. You are the rock and roller of Corpus Christi.
Yeah, stone business.
Stone business.
That's where you can get stoned in Corpus Christi. But legally, I guess.
Yeah.
But then the other day, right after I was robbed down here, they stole my 2009 Dodge 3500 flatbed truck that we use for deliveries.
And where was that? In Flower Bluff?
It was in Flower Bluff. We park it.
That's some bad hombres in Flower Bluff. They used to have the brush people over there in Flower Bluff. They used to live it. They call it. It's kind of an indigenous tribal tribe.
Yeah,
they call them.
Yeah, they're little
brush people.
I think they have a little structure there on the bay. But yeah, no, these guys were a little more professional, and that's my understanding with some feedback from some other business owners that are around the city, is we seem to be getting a more professional element of criminal here in addition to the large number of homeless crimes committed. But These guys came in with equipment that they broke into the building. They stole computer monitors, cell phone, some
Well,
different things.
I can tell you, there's groups that come like out of Houston.
Right. Yeah, these.
And there's professional crooks that like come out of Houston, like work, and they hit Corpus. And
when we tried to create a secure, we had a safe with the wiring running into the safe to try to limit their ability to steal my DVR and my cameras, which post to the internet. There was an issue with the internet, so we weren't able to get internet copy. But they took the DVR, they took all the cameras, they took.
And that was all in Flower Bluff.
They were all in Flower Bluff. They took some time to clean me out there. It took them.
Oh my gosh!
Unless there was a large crew.
That's nothing funny. I hope you were insured.
Yeah, the truck was. The other equipment was not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear about that. And tell me about the rock business you've got over there in Flower Bluff. So, like, you sell all these landscape and gardening stones I see around.
Right, all these, like you have the engraved address. We do a lot of the engravings on stone and security boulders. Whenever you see an accident here in town where someone has run through somebody's yard and hit their house. Right. Well, you'll see a lot of boulders around town that we put at key intersections.
I have a corner property with my house, and it's got a drive from one street to the next.
Right.
And I would have people driving down the street and to cut through.
Yeah.
I mean, so I bought some of these boulders from you, and to block off the circular drive. So.
Well, and Jack in the Box has done that. They've gotten boulders from us. McDonald's, Stripes, Rudy's, Barbecue.
What about those? I guess the boulders are a lot easier than those pylons, right?
Yeah, I think. Well, also aesthetically, it just. I'm not a big fan of prefabricated products. I think a natural look, it's secure. It's actually cheaper to just drop a boulder right there. And
so, where do you get these boulders from?
Most of them are local Texas products imported from the Hill Country.
Is that right?
And that up above Marble Falls. And,
but rock, you sell it by the pound. Rocks are it's unbelievable how expensive rocks are.
They are heavy. That's what we bring some from our ranch in outside of Uvalde, and
they don't cost you anything.
Well, no, like we say, they're free to get them off the ranch. But by the time you pay somebody to load them and truck them down here and get them unloaded, and about 80% of the cost of a rock is in shipping and handling. And because they are so heavy, you can carry so few. You load an 18-wheeler down pretty quickly of rock. The granite, we sell some granite boulders. You'll see a granite truck bringing granite down, and the thing is mostly empty because they're already at the weight limit with just a small load.
Well, you mentioned about we're getting at maybe a different degree of criminal here in Corpus Christi, and do you think much? And you said that some of the people that had robbed you here might have been homeless, you believe?
Right. Yeah, I'm fairly certain that these were homeless robberies here on Santa Fe and Fifth, just because small things were taking. It was like the deal with the recent robbery where they took my wallet, several $100s in cash in the wallet, credit cards, and all that. It's just a deal of opportunity. I parked there. We were unloading stuff. I think may have left my front door open, or if not, it was unlocked at the very most. And so they very quickly took advantage of that situation when they saw it, and assumed that they would get on their bike and take off. And
well, let me ask you this: you're a finance professor. I mean, did you ever factor in the homeless situation in local economies and or prosperity of a city? Or my thoughts are some of the most prosperous cities in the United States, San Diego or LA, seem to have huge homeless problems. How's our homeless problems? Could it negatively impact our growth?
I think our homeless problem per capita is the worst I've seen in a long time. Even relative to Houston, downtown Houston has a pretty serious homeless problem, but then you've got to consider the size and the number of people there, and I think the number of homeless I see in a day, and I'm not sure how homeless they really are. They appear to be a very organized group of homeless people, and they're.
Why do you think they're organized?
Well, I think we were talking earlier about I walked through the Target passway there, and a group of them were apparently they're organizing their marketing campaign for the street by writing up their posters that they were going to carry.
So you actually were going from the back of the Target on the south side, and you saw like a group of people.
Right.
You saw a group of people kind of talking about.
Yeah. Well, they were there. They were there writing with their marker on the. I guess they had one marker and a bunch of torn up boxes there, and all of them were preparing their marketing agenda for the day.
Slogan.
To head down to SPID and to get going on it. But yeah, we've got a serious problem here. I'm not sure if it is an organized element or if it's just people moving here with the new economic prosperity we've got.
A friend of mine, kind of a conservative farmer guy, he said, well, he thinks. I said, well, we must be pretty poor because of the homeless. He said, no, he thinks the more prosperous an area is, the more homeless it attracts. Right. And I think there's a certain degree of truth in that.
Right. No, that's I think that's true. Any resort area you go to, any place that's a destination, it attracts the homeless. It's a pretty place to live.
I understand. I understand that this New York mayor, right? Wasn't the governor? Mayor Giuliani was very good at eliminating the homeless problems on Times Square, et cetera, right?
Yeah, he was pretty aggressive about it. I think, though, that it might have been the Supreme Court had stepped in and limited some of his ability to institutionalize people or at that. But he was very good at I think, resettling the homeless to another part of the community.
Well, and that's always with
that's
always an issue.
Active police enforcement, active monitoring. And, just like there's a reason that people are on the fringes of society, and it probably involves issues that we don't want them around our children and families on a regular basis. So I think we need to be very careful where we allow them to congregate, and because.
I have a hard because what I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
No, I'm just saying.
I mean, I have a hard time looking at it mercilessly. I said on the last show that we did that I know a lot of my Social Security disability clients, the ones with severe emotional problems, if you have to ask them because they don't come out and tell you this. 95% of them were sexually or physically abused. Right. So I mean, I hate to be, now I don't know about that's. I think that's the men too. Right. And you see mostly men on the streets.
It's primarily men. That's a very few women.
But it might be
curious about that.
Well, it might be that there's more of a social undernet for women. You know what I'm saying? There's more. Possibly, yeah. There's a women's shelter, for example. I don't know if the men have something similar.
I get maybe the male species. I know I'm a little more solitary than maybe.
But I gotta say this. It's funny. Some of the guys might like it on the streets.
Yeah, well, that's independence. And,
when I hit Houston during the boom in the '80s, I met one friend of mine. The guys, everybody was coming from the north, the Houston boom, and I met some colorful characters. And a friend of mine from Pittsburgh had a couple of friends, and they said the funniest things. They said, "Oh, you'll never go hungry in America." Yeah. Well, why? You just go in a grocery store and eat until they throw you out. And he was, I mean, and then a friend of his said, "Yeah, they both knew what they'd both done this," yeah. And they were kind of a couple characters, and they didn't want to seem to be constrained by the same limitations of working every day, etc. Right. And it's kind of a little bit of an American phenomenon, Woody Guthrie. And the open road and hitching on the boxcar, etc. It's kind of a phenomenon in America.
And to be honest, I wouldn't be overly concerned about them stealing food. I guess that would be. We then arrest them and they go to jail, and we feed them there as well. So I don't know. My concern is also just the physical jeopardy you may place people in. Was visiting with some people yesterday at the baseball game, and they were talking about some of the. There's been an increase in other violence as well, violence, rapes, things like that. And so undoubtedly these are all tied together. Probably most of these guys are down here. They may have some minor mental disabilities that limit their ability to function. But undoubtedly, among them is another element that probably is far more dangerous.
I shouldn't. This show is supposed to be the voice for my guest, not for me. But I would say that I think that it's underestimated regarding the psychological abilities that one has to have to work. You have to have the ability to concentrate for a 2-hour period. You have to have the ability to get along with coworkers. You have to have the ability to get along with supervisors. You have to be able to concentrate for a 2-hour period. And I know that from my practice. So some of these things that we all take for granted are not,
right.
It's easy to miss any of those elements,
No, any one of those is missing, and they just don't have the ability to function. The question is, do we also have to think about the well-being of society in general? So some of those less fortunate, we've got to figure out a way to deal with them and help them as best we can, but not to the detriment of everybody else, I guess.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that is this ever discussed in any of your finance courses?
Yes, I'll tell you now. It is becoming understanding the way the mind works is, I think, is the new frontier of finance and financial planning and investments, because we are driven far more by those things that you're talking about than logic and reasoning is the truth.
I'm wondering sometimes if the stock market wasn't aware of this, because there are theories, some of them pretty well grounded, that the people could be driven into the market by a sense of excitement in the media. Of course, the media is more complicated than it used to be, but I remember in the 70s there was a book called The Wall Street Journal and the Wall Street Gang, and I think I remember the guy's name. His name was Nye, and he had pretty well documented that maybe the Wall Street Journal and a couple of these other news sources were manipulating, to move people into the markets and out. Right. Have you ever studied that issue?
No, and that's actually, it has been studied, and I've read about it. They're the primary advertisers in the Wall Street Journal and Barron's and Investors Business Daily, and some of those are the brokerage firms that benefit from your trading.
Yes.
And so they want to create a sense that this news is urgent and important, so that you're more likely to trade on it, more likely to come in and out of the market to generate those fees. One thing that's helped that is we've gone into a more fee-based management deal where brokers don't make money as much anymore the more you trade. And trading has just become a very cheap commodity. So I think we're starting to see better advice in these publications.
Yeah, online trading too.
Yeah, well, that's
drove down the price of trading too, to a certain extent.
Right.
You invest in the market?
I do. I invest, but I buy. Take a little bit of time, think about it. I buy it and I hold it for about 10 years, and then I look at it again to see how it's done and make sure I'm
well, what about all those? What was it? Investors Daily News, they have this coffee cup model that, and then, you're only supposed to hold on to, if it goes down 10%, sell. What about those theories?
That's what we've noticed about human civilization is through time we have continued to expand, continued to grow. Population grows, technology grows, the wealth of society grows. So if you just take a good diversified approach, then you'll have ups and downs. And in fact, downs are good because that's an opportunity to acquire more at a cheaper price. And I've got some mathematical examples I give my students in historical markets. If you are a very consistent investor like a turtle versus the hare, and you stay with it and consistently chip away and never make a bet on any one sector or any one stock in a large way, then you're going to acquire a substantial amount of wealth over your life. And
I've heard that, but and then what do? You start saving at 18. Do you have one of those models? Or 21? Well, how are you going to be saving? I don't know what happened.
I think that's my phone. I forgot to cut it off.
Oh, okay. Hopefully it'll turn off in a second. How are you going to start saving at 18 to 21 when you're in college? You can, and you chip away. I have a rule that I give my personal finance students. It's your age divided by 2 is the percent of money you should contribute. And I tell them to use their inflow, not the money they earn, even their student loan money, to take
So if they're 18, they use 9% of their student loan money. And like you say, nobody in America is going to starve to death. And college students,
I'm not saying that,
live a pretty
but
good
those
life.
guys did say that.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is poverty, okay, in the United States wherein people starve to death or not, but there might be.
Right.
I don't really know. Do you know?
Yeah, I'm sure that, like you're talking about, people with mental disabilities just may not have the capability
Right.
to work the system, and possibly there's definitely malnutrition.
Well, what about during the hurricane in Louisiana?
Yeah, I mean,
it seemed like there was a lot of deep-seated poverty there.
Yeah, a lot of.
And you're saying college students should be saving about 8%. They live a pretty good life.
Well,
and let me tell you something. That wasn't the case when I was in college. When I was in college, we lived like students.
Right.
Nobody had a car. You lived on campus. You know what I'm saying? Now they live like middle-class citizens.
Most of the students have better cars than the faculty, I think.
I don't know how many years it was. I don't know how many years it was before I had a better car than my secretary. I think it was quite a few years.
I haven't quite figured that out yet, but and one of my best friends who passed away a few years ago there, Ray Whitmire, he had his 1970 car. That poor thing didn't have air conditioner. It wouldn't.
Some people, I don't want to, you shouldn't have mentioned his name. Has he passed away?
Yeah, Ray.
Well, then we can say some people got no.
Well, no, he's but that's an example of a professor. I'll tell you, professors are tight with their money.
Well, a lot of the professors don't make much money.
Yeah, well,
isn't that right?
They're very frugal.
The ones in the business department generally do much better.
We do a little better, engineering, science.
Yes, you do better.
But across the board, professors are pretty frugal with their money, and the students show up in BMWs and Mercedes, and I think a lot of it's just the ability to finance. To get something now and pay for it later in their thing. But and then students live a pretty tuition, and the cost is really there to subsidize their lifestyle. We basically have condos at the university they live in on the beach, and a health club for them, a student center, and all kinds of activities to entertain them. The classrooms, everything, a lot of technology. So these guys live very well.
Well, it's interesting. So what you're saying is that even though people complain a lot about the cost of the education, they're actually living a pretty affluent existence with gyms, etc., and whatever entertainment.
A lot better than when I went to school. That's for sure. College has changed a lot. We've got advisors, we've got lots of tutors and help centers, and there's a huge safety net that used to not exist, trying to first recruit students and then retain them. And so they do very well as far as and so that's why I say they used to, we would double up and triple up in the rooms, and our international students still do that. But they have money, they can save money. It's just a matter of deciding to do it.
But there's no, okay, so you're giving them this formula. Now, if you start doing this at 18, you hit the skids, can't get a job, something happens, whatever, get a divorce, guys get divorced, lose, how many times have you heard of that? Guy gets divorced. Wife gets his money, half his money, he's just broke, whatever. Hits the bottle. All this stuff. Oh, I'm going to do this for 10. Okay, that's not life, is it?
No, and that's what we call premature extraction risk. But actually, college students have more disposable income than a working guy with two kids and house payments, car payments, braces, and so a college student. That's why they tend to go out more and enjoy themselves more. They've got money to spend. That's what I try to impress upon my students. Here shortly, you're going to be working, and you'll be surprised how much you don't have you've got to pay the student loans back now. And
maintaining, if they want to maintain their own house or apartment, then that's where their prices goes up significantly. If they would live at home or in a position to live at home the first 3 years out of college or something, then they could probably get on their feet pretty well.
Do like a lot of us did. We bunk beds and two guys in a room.
Oh, did you do that?
Yeah. So we did that.
You went to the mattresses. The mattresses.
Yeah. So we kind of live different. we had a different view back then on I guess not minding.
Well, part of the thing is, see, I think that you said we had a different view. See, you've got to fit in. I think, I mean, the conservatives have some good arguments. Well, you should save your money. You should do this. Well, but you're in a certain social and cultural milieu. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, it could be extreme. In a big city, if you get like a white-collar job, you can't be wearing threadbare. You cannot be wearing threadbare clothes, and you're expected to drive a certain sort of vehicle.
Right.
And if you're a member of almost any kind of social class structure, there are certain expectations that make, kind of extreme behavior. You may find yourself out of a job. It could,
Yeah, I'm not entirely. I actually think my cousin made a name for himself. Went to Harvard Law School, and then got a right out of Harvard. Was working for a law firm in Houston. He drove the same truck that he had in high school, all the way through college, through Harvard, and then his first few years at the law firm, it was a GM truck with the hood was rusting, and he developed a reputation as a go-to guy because of had an accounting degree, because of his frugalness and miserly behavior towards money, and that they really tended to appreciate. He ended up having to buy a new truck because he had a wreck and this truck was totaled. Otherwise, he'd have kept driving it, I'm assuming, until it fell apart. And now he's on his second truck, and he's 46 years old. So.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, there's been studies about these vehicles.
Yeah.
There's been studies about these vehicles, how much money you could, save.
Save, yeah. No, he's an example of. So I don't know that. I think that social pressure is self-imposed a lot. I think that I trust an employee a lot more who's frugal with their money than one that has a lot of payments. I'm worried that that may be an incentive to possibly pilfer on the deal.
And I think there's very few small businessmen that haven't had that issue come before them.
Yeah. That's what. No, but I think the mental aspect of finance. When I was young, I used to think, it's so simple. Just spend less than you make and save and invest that difference. But as I started gaining weight and trying to lose that weight, I realized our base instincts are very powerful things to overcome, and just telling someone to spend less than they make.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look at a person's. How many people? This is a sensitive subject, but I mean, how many men go broke because of their sexuality? Mm-hmm. Because numerous affairs. Right. They're married, have an affair, get divorced, have an affair, get divorced. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you tell somebody that? How do you discuss that in finance? Well, look, you guys. Get married young and stay married, and you'll be fine. Well, then you got to find the right woman. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of personal.
I like to throw it all out there, and some of the students don't like it necessarily.
Well, I'm sure.
But I throw it out there because I call it our inner caveman, overcoming our inner caveman, and because our inner caveman ate the highest calorie foods they could get, they hoarded. They bought on credit to stay alive, and so I have the first series of videos is under Basic Instinct, and I show them a series of small short videos about different mate selection and issues involving because like you're saying, the attorneys get most of the money at some point for through divorces.
All right, here we go. Let me tell you something. There's a statistic. We're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to what attorneys get most of the money. But, it's really the issue regarding what you're saying is the baser instincts. I mean, you could look at many of us had grandparents, right? You'd have grandparents, and some of them came from Europe. They may not have made a lot of money, but because, whatever they stayed married, and or they were very frugal. A lot of them didn't have cars. They live in the city. They walk to work. A lot of them wound up very well off financially. Mm-hmm. And then yet you have the same people. You'll have people today that, you'll see them. They eat out all the time. The big costs. They never eat at home.
Right.
And then they're complaining that they're poor.
I think there were social structures back then that imposed more discipline in our lives than they do now.
Probably so.
That's what because now without those social structures, our base instincts have more freedom.
Well, you are
to expose themselves, I guess.
You are freer now, and in a bigger city, I'll say several lawyers that basically were too wild for Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
3 or 4. I mean, in a bigger city, it's even worse. Whatever these lawyers, some of them had too much DWIs, some of them, that they basically had to leave. So I think in a bigger city, there's even less social structure.
Well, and also think that that another problem we're faced with is is just like animals are attracted to shiny items, humans are animals too, and we have a lot more shiny items now to buy. And so we have to be a lot stronger to resist the temptation for the newest and the best phones. 150 years ago, there just weren't many consumer items to grab your interest on a regular basis.
But you know what? There is a saying in the Bible, I don't remember if it's in Proverbs or something, where they say something about merchants being sly. I think it's in Proverbs or something. Merchants are sly, so watch your money or something.
Not near as sly as they are now, because they have all this psychological research on the colors that attract you, and so marketers now are incredibly sly.
Well, and psychological research and what are they? I forgot the term for wherein they embed pictures and words,
subliminal
advertising and messages. Is that still occurring? It was really came out, I think, in that book in the 70s. There was a book that came out in the 70s exploring it.
I think that they just like the sex in the advertising, the things they sell they're triggering our base instincts, and in a way that I don't think merchants back in ancient Rome could have done. I think I'm talking too much, but there was a statue of the famous statue of Julius Caesar. I think there's a dog at his feet or something, wherein they would perpetuate these statues to show everybody the influence of power and influence of Rome. And supposedly this statue was very misleading. It showed him as a benevolent, kind man, whatever, with this dog at his feet, and it was totally opposite to what he was. And it was spread throughout that particular statue. It was spread throughout the empire. So I agree. I think they're much more sophisticated, but I don't know. That nation state seemed to perpetuate that sort of thing many years ago. But not at the level that we have today. And you look at the politicians today. Obama is on TV every day almost, and senators, congrresmen, leaders, and so even at that level they get. There's a fame.
Professor Noam Chomsky is fond of saying, and he did a radio interview with me and mentioned this, is fond of saying that President Obama won an award for his advertising campaign when he first. What year was that? When he became the president? I guess it was at 2008, right?
Yeah, 2008.
2008. He won the National Advertising Award for that campaign of Hope and Change. Hope and Change, right?
I don't remember.
I think it was Hope and Change.
I think he did do a good job. They all,
and
they're all professionals.
some people were very enthusiastic Obama supporters. To me, he was just another politician.
Right. Well, that's kind of.
So what's he showing me? But that's what I thought. But me and a friend of mine thought that was pretty funny. We make these jokes. Say you're sitting in an auditorium, he's saying Hope and Change. Well, I don't know. One guy wishes he was with Britney Spears. Another guy hopes for. How's he going to bring me my hope? So it's kind of a very manipulative.
Right. Yeah, they're selling something that there's no way they can deliver. Is the fact.
Right. As a matter of fact, there was like an anthropological. Some anthropologists said that they're very similar to magicians in a way that they have you believe that they could do things they can't do.
Yeah. Suspension of disbelief is what it is. Yeah. Everybody knows that you couldn't keep the same health care plan you had, or you can't have the best health care, and nobody will be. It was mathematically and financially impossible to do that. He knew it was mathematically impossible, but there's a whole group of people that want to believe it so badly.
Well, let's talk about, as they refer to the Affordable Health Care Act or Obamacare is now, I guess, the law of the land. Have you looked into it? Is it working, effectively in the United States? Is it any worse or better?
I don't know. You hear on just listening. You go to Fox News or MSNBC, and you get two extremes. What concerns me is any move to control or restrict or manipulate the system. The government does so many things with the best intentions that never work out, and that's what concerns me. And I'm also worried that we may lose the quality of doctors that we have. Some discussions with
what makes you believe we have quality doctors? Do you believe that?
They're better than most people, most places in the world. But
are they?
Yeah. In the technology and healthcare is supposedly free in a lot of places in the world, but to say something is free does not. You also get what you pay for. So when something is free, odds are it's free for a reason. It's very cheap.
Well, there's a couple things. It's taken as a given when both are in the media that America's, what do they call it? America's healthcare plan, or who said America's supposed to have a healthcare plan?
Yeah.
I don't know where they came up with that.
Well, yeah.
Healthcare? No, they say American healthcare system. The American healthcare system. What are you talking? What system? Mm-hmm. You got a doctor. You're supposed to have hospitals. You go
right.
Who called for a centralized system?
Well, and that's the problem. I don't think you can centralize it. I do think the government has a very important role in any of these major systems like that, because a laissez-faire system just leads to excessive billing and unethical practices by doctors. So it has to be regulated to some degree and researched.
Well, there's a tremendous restraint of trade and licensing, et cetera, that has driven up the cost of medical care to extreme.
Right.
Hasn't it?
But you still find doctors that defraud people.
Well, but that's on a government program, Medicaid,
right.
Medicaid,
but
it's tremendous.
Even private.
But in defense of them, I can say this: did you ever see what they were paid?
Right.
Well, there's no way they could see them, and I mean that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no way they could afford to see them and not engage in fraud.
And that's my concern. There's a concern there. Whenever you say that a person that spends 10 or 12 years in school, honing their craft, goes hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt, and then you begrudge them when they start making a little bit of money, I think is un-American.
But you wouldn't begrudge. You would begrudge the attorneys though, because the attorneys were given a hard time, but the doctors have been defended, which is an act.
Yeah,
isn't that right?
I think that's where you think about the balance in the system, and this goes back to some of the lawsuit reform. You need that balance.
In fact,
balance,
since they have basically made doctors and the medical establishment immune from lawsuits, one could intelligibly argue that they claim medical malpractice as the second cause of death in America, second to, I think, automobile accidents. Have you heard that?
No, I think actually medical error is still the number one cause.
Okay.
Yeah,
it seems like
130,000 people a year.
There's very little accountability because of
they're getting better, but they're still very bad at their job as far as quality control goes.
So you would say that Obamacare and or the Affordable Health Care Act, you stated earlier, it's very difficult to assess because it's politicized. Wherein CNN is on one side, Fox is on another.
Yeah, and
I don't think much of either one of those networks for that reason. But
the interesting thing about American healthcare is we're very good at taking care of really serious problems, and even the politicians from Canada come here for treatment. We don't seem very good at taking care of the our basic
everyday
health.
Problems.
Yeah, the basic health.
Yes, everyday problems.
And to be honest,
I've had everyday problems. I would love to go to a doctor, but I know by the time I get in there and then I wait for 2 hours and then I can't take all day.
Not worth your time. Yeah.
So you just live with it.
I'm hoping that technology will start alleviating a lot of those issues where you no longer have to go see the doctor.
They won't allow. They won't allow that.
But,
You think they'll allow that?
I think there will be. I think that inevitably.
Look at the pharmacists.
We've already got.
Look at how necessary are they?
Yeah, that's well. That's
I mean,
And I think.
Look at
technology will start streamlining.
But it's all. I don't think so, because it's all a restraint of trade. It's monopolization. That's why. Right? Like I say, that this idea, you have this pharmacist behind there, he's counting out pills, and then somebody has to write the script instead of you going. You remember how it was in Mexico? Was there any big downside in going over there and buying your own meds?
Buying your own meds, yeah. No,
was there any harm in that? It was cheap, it was easy.
Clearly, they're using safety concerns. They're too liberally as an excuse for imposing a monopolistic power. I guess that's the best way to put it. Monopoly power.
We'll get back to Corpus Christi here, because there was an article in the Corpus Christi Coastal Bend Economic Pulse about, and there seems to be some issue regarding the growth of population in Corpus Christi. You related it to maybe the homeless problem earlier, that maybe the growth and the prosperity has caused an additional homeless or crime problem. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's inevitable with the increase in money and activity and media attention. Undoubtedly, the homeless read the newspapers, and so they move to the communities where they think the harvest will be good. In the deal, so undoubtedly that's attracted them here.
How big is Corpus Christi expected to get?
I've heard this. We're talking 600,000 in a short period of time in the metropolitan. And it's kind of the around Corpus Christi and surrounding area.
Right.
And it's gonna and maybe bigger. I think that growth is going to be inevitable. The question is, do we do it intelligently and are prepared for it, or do it's
but there's nobody that could. It's a free enterprise system. As I said in the last show, how are you going to do it intelligently? I mean, look at Everhart and SBID. These businesses want to be located there. There's tremendous traffic jams there. I don't think City Council ever said, "Hey, look, we need to regulate this." Should we?
Well, and I'm just thinking about the crime issue. I mean, they need to start being prepared for it. And what will happen is we could lose the right businesses because of the crime element, and then we get the wrong groups here, and these businesses may locate in a community where they can better.
Well, apparently you've been tragically affected by crime recently, really. And I don't mean to make light of it, but what are you going to do? Police catch criminals after the fact, not before.
Well,
I don't know what you're going to.
They've actually technology has alleviated a lot of. They've talked about these. I was reading some. It's very interesting, proactive crime prevention and using statistics and through active patrolling and more intelligent policing.
There's been some interesting science fiction movies and thoughts about that they're going to they're going to put you in jail before you commit the crime because they're going to be able to predict it. And I mean, it's based upon someone's socioeconomic status that they're not naturally going to be more likely predisposed, right? So the statistics. So they're going to be targeting your neighborhood here and saying, "Hey."
Yeah. Well, and I think that through implementing, that's the great thing about historical information is just like marketers have become more and more slick in convincing us to buy a product. The police should be using that same intelligence they've gained over hundreds of years a lot more effectively. And,
they do. They profile people. Just joking. But I mean, they kind of, by profiling, that's an example of, they kind of know a lot of times. Not saying that I agree with it constitutionally or whatever. And I was kind of, that's more of a horse sense thing. You're basically stating that they could use more sophisticated tactics, perhaps.
Right, and just modeling and data analysis and probably be a lot more proactive in mitigating some of this.
Well, we've had there was a tragic shooting wherein 2 children were killed, and there's theories that it's very likely to be gang related. I don't know that there were gang enforced, gang task units, etc. I don't I don't know. Do you know, or are gangs a problem in Corpus Christi, or?
I'm not. I believe the people that robbed my business probably were organized in some way, at their level of sophistication. As far as the gang stuff, I'm not. You know, have much insight on that, but I think that boils down to the public school systems. A lot of times, the inability of these parents to move their kids freely to better schools and to get them out of those situations, I think is one of the bigger detriments, and to compel those schools to be more competitive and do a better job.
So you think the localized school system creates gangs because parents who see their children, for example, in a gang, can't move them to another school.
Right. Their portability is very difficult. When you look at gang creation, inevitably, the public school in that area does a very poor job of educating students, and it may be that the resources they have available to them aren't sufficient. But in addition to that, there's a whole group of kids there that would be so much more productive and have so much opportunity if there were alternatives for them. You look at the university system, and we compete at Texas A&M Corpus with private schools. We compete with public schools. A college student does not have to go to the school in their hometown. They can choose to go to another school, and so that makes us a lot more. Even at the state, even in state schools where we're subsidized, that makes us a lot more proactive.
Of course, it's more possible because you have children, you have young people that could be on their own by the time they're 18 versus.
I think you start shifting that money around and saying, well, we're taking the money away from this school and we're going to move it to this school. And we use the buses and we use these opportunities to get these kids out of these poor schools, and we allow schools to contend and teachers in top performing schools to get paid more, just like a business gets paid more that does a better job.
What's interesting about our economy right now, you're talking about education, et cetera, but it would seem like the boom in the jobs here locally is good. A friend of mine said it's a person with a GED's dream come true.
Right, it should be.
Because there's these fracking jobs are, you don't need much of an education. And I'm assuming that these factories that are coming to Corpus Christi, I forget now, it's a Chinese pipe factory, right? Mm-hmm. It's an Italian plastics factory.
TJPC.
And then it's a German, I don't remember what they're making.
Right, and the natural gas. And I think that'll be, all of a sudden, a gang becomes less appealing when you're making $15, $20 an hour, and you start getting a little money in your pocket, and you start realizing there's a lot more risk to committing petty crime now. And so in that opportunity, the one thing that I've noticed about a lot of these kids is the thing you went to with the mental illness. It makes it very difficult for them to focus or concentrate. They develop a lifestyle that really makes it difficult for them to get out of bed at 8 a.m. and go to a job. And so they're really not qualified to, because they haven't had the imposed discipline and the structure to allow them to be successful in a job or pass a drug test.
Have you had a difficult time in hiring employees in Corpus Christi that are productive and give you a fair day's work for a fair day's dollar in your businesses?
It's the worst place I've been where I've hired people, and the difficulty. I think we're going to have a cultural transition here.
All small businessmen here seem to share in that belief in Corpus Christi. And as a matter of fact, well, maybe it was 4 years ago, I somehow got interested in politics again, right, for a little bit. They asked people to come, and this Democratic thing, we're going to write the platform, right? Mm-hmm. And so we were talking about, jobs and this and that. I said, what are you going to do about the problem with the work ethic in Corpus Christi? And I must say these people were all Democrats, but they all agreed that there was a problem here. Why do you think that is?
Part of it is not the people's fault so much is in a lack of opportunity. I think people lose a little hope, and they lose a little that feeling that they're being rewarded for their work. And so when you never seem to be rewarded for your effort, you just develop a level of apathy that's hard to overcome. and some of the worst complainers I've heard are attorneys, just trying to get help at the front desk, trying to find someone that can answer the phone effectively, take messages, and even manage just manage what most people would consider basic secretarial duties.
Well,
and that's and then not to mention the lack of skilled labor.
I've had a harder time in terms of getting people to paint my properties and or to maintain them than I have in getting adequate secretarial help. I've had, in other words, the blue collar workforce doesn't, whether it's cutting grass, etc. I've had a hard time with that.
Well, and that's that's a function of I think this market where people haven't had, there's really not been that opportunity where they even were trained to be successful in that. And I think you mentioned the education function. I think we really need to look at our schools and see, are we doing the right thing by these people? One of the more productive societies groups out there now is Germany, who has a differential education system that allows for more entrepreneurial opportunities. And so
we got to hope they don't freak out on us again.
Who's that?
The Germans.
The Germans.
You never know. You got to watch them.
keep
an eye on them.
That's the problem with too much structure.
Yeah, right. They're wrapped pretty tight. Before you know it.
You get a little too homogenous. You get a little too tight in the ant den. And
I hate to say this, but when I see Hitler's speeches, I'm not buying it. It looks pretty mean to me. So the local economy, though, is going through a pretty low unemployment rate now, right? And I guess how are those factories coming that I hear about? Are any of them built yet, or how far are they from completion?
I think I'm Dr. Lee out there is the guy that's the expert on that. But every time I drive across the bridge, I see areas being cleared and things being built, and so it's pretty exciting. What I see is in the long-term prospects of this city, we'll have a big wave of blue-collar workers to build the infrastructure and to get all these businesses set up and running, and then that next wave will be the more professional workers who manage it, and that's gonna change the nature of Corpus Christi a lot, I believe. Maybe 2 decades down the road, but I foresee a time where they've always talked about, we need these high-paying, higher tech, higher impact
that's always
jobs.
been an issue, right?
Right, and the truth is, we don't have the opportunity here now to even for those jobs. But once you get that infrastructure in place, and the building and the construction is done, then that's the group that comes in and fills the offices that are being built. So I do foresee a period of time in the future where the nature of this city is going to change substantially for the better.
We had the last time you were on the show, I had some technical problems. We had covered some things regarding, say, the government shutdown, et cetera, which is, is there any way to evaluate the economic impact on that government shutdown? Was it a harmful thing, or are we already over it?
The shutdown, to a large degree, is irrelevant. They end up repaying. They pay the workers for all the vacation they got, and to a large degree, so it's almost a non-event. I think.
Well, the productivity, though. I mean, there's zero productivity.
Zero productivity, and the taxpayers foot the bill for the zero productivity. That's the downside to it. The good thing is about a government shutdown that needs to be more persistent is just a reevaluation of the functions they do. I think I saw an entertaining study one time in France. When the doctors went on strike, the death rate dropped substantially because they were doing less surgery. And so a lot of what the government does is with the best of intentions.
Oh, sure, I'm sure. It's like when something happens, I guess, in your business. If something happens in your business or something, and you could lose an employee or something, and you realize I don't need that, or somebody steals one of your computers, you go, well, I guess we didn't need that computer anyway, at least for 6 months,
Well, the government it's just like anything. There's always too much of a good thing, and we saw back in the Roosevelt administration during the 1930s, that the government involvement became a very positive thing in our economy, all the way through Eisenhower, building the interstate highways,
right?
Because we very badly needed that infrastructure, and with the
but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh well, with the development of that laid the foundation for our prosperity.
Well, why can't it be a positive thing now? Why is it always assumed now it can't be a positive thing? Why is it that when I see these politicians running for office, they don't say, well, look, we got Detroit here, and we've got a lot of infrastructure, and we've got a lot of labor, and we could do something with this? Why is it that why is it that there's not that same spirit that government can accomplish and do things? I'm not so certain that it can't lay the path for prosperity again.
It could if it just decided to downsize by about 50%. That would probably lay the path for prosperity. Now, most of what the government does is transfer payments, and then we invest substantial sums in our military for national defense. Military is a very important thing, but we're not fighting a world war.
Well, some people say that that's a direct benefit to the arms manufacturers and the large companies. That's a direct payment to them.
Well, it is, but it's not economically beneficial. The reason is it's kind of the broken window theory of economics. We can pay hoodlums to go around breaking all the windows in town, and so the hoodlums get money. Then we break all the windows, so the street sweepers, the cleaners, the window installers, the window manufacturers, they all make money. And but in the end, you can't run an economy that way. And the problem with substantial prolonged military expenditures are that they're very important and necessary at a level to maintain our defense. But once we get past a certain level, they become very detrimental and start with, drawing down.
And then some people claim it's a government jobs program for uneducated people. The military provides that function.
Maybe we educate them and put them to work in productive areas like the fracking business to drill more oil.
Might be a good idea. I wanted to thank you. Always a pleasure. Professor Swint Friday, Texas A&M Finance Professor. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Friday. Bye-bye. Good night.
And lives way up on Greenback Hill. Way he treats the women, low down dirty shame. You ought to hear him scream when they call Dollar Bill's name. They call him Mr. Dollar, and his last name is Bill. Well, he lives in a mansion way up on Greenback Hill. And lives way up on Greenback Hill. women, low down dirty shame. You ought to hear 'em scream when they call Dollar Bill's name. They call him Mr. Dollar, and his last name is Bill. Well, he lives in a mansion way up on Greenback Hill.